I was really surprised whenever they said that, they had friends who were anarchists. And it was just interesting because I didn't know that, like, anarchy was, like, a common political thought between people. Like it makes sense why people would come to that conclusion, but at the same time, I think anarchy would just, eventually devolve to chaos. I don't know. Do you have any perspectives on that?
I think from the anarchist perspective, that's the idea.
Yeah.
I think that it's supposed to be that there's order and chaos. But all that goes kind of back into the deeper theories of, like, are humans inherently political, and things like that.
Yeah.
If there were no government, would we end up just making one again?
Yeah.
Things like that, which I think we would. I guess I adhere to those theories. I think any group of humans that you look at throughout history, they have some sort of hierarchy or structure.
Yeah.
Whatever form it may take.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that humans are inherently political.
But I agree, yeah. I feel like that's, I don't know, because even when you're, like, young, like, when you're playing with other kids, like, I think you somewhat devolve to, like, or not devolve, you, like, go into, like, a form of governance, like, even in the classroom, you, like, raise your hand and, vote on what you're going to do for recess and stuff like that. So it's, I don't know, I think it's just in our nature, especially in American kids, to, point towards democracy.
Yeah. But also how much of that is kind of a socialization of, that's what just we're taught and ingrained with, too. So there's, I think there's a lot at play.
Yeah. Yeah, so our next question is democracy still attainable in the 21st century? I'll let you start with this one since I've started, like, every single other one.
Yeah. I think so. I think that something that's really important in order for it to happen is the involvement of people from our generation and people starting to really become aware and care about issues more. I think that that's kind of a driving factor in one of the negative aspects of our current political system is the furthering of misinformation and people ceasing to care, I guess, and not getting involved as much as you might have used to. I think that that's really important. There is also, with all that misinformation, a lot of negativity that goes around. I think trying to bring more positivity to light and paint a more positive picture of democracy in general media would probably help out a lot with that, because it is hard to feel positive when you hear all these negative articles in the news and stuff. And honestly, I think things like that kind of contribute to people starting to drift towards things like anarchist thought, because you get so much negativity that without getting informed through, like, the experiences we've had this semester, you just think, well, what's the point? Or why are we even trying this still?
Yeah, I agree. Going off that, I do think that we definitely do need to modernize democracy and make democracy fit with, the average American life, because whenever we went to the city council, we had to go there at, like, I think it was like noon or something, and a lot of what they talked about was, like, people don't come to these unless they're, like, retired or just don't work, and it's hard for them to get involved because they're busy with other stuff. They have kids, they have a job, they have to take care of other people, and you know the last thing on their mind is going to their city council and seeing how their city is spending their budget. And you know, both of those things are equally important, and I think people should definitely have the opportunity to both care about politics while also maintaining their personal life. So I think there needs to be something in place, at least within like the federal government, because you know they're still operating on a system that was created 200 years ago and 250 years ago. But I also just think that like they need to make it more attainable for the average person to get involved in democracy in order for democracy to still work in the 21st century.
Yeah. I do think one interesting nuance about things like the city council meetings being just in the afternoon is that during that meeting, that was one of the things we brought up with Councillor Karan, and she said that at some point they tried having them in the evenings and they had the same amount of attendance. So I think that it is important to have it at a more accessible time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the meetings alternate, you know, having 1 week it's at 1 o'clock, but then later on, 2 weeks later,
Mm-hmm.
it's like every other meeting's at a different time.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's more of a need for a push for information.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's true for every level of politics that people just don't know
Mm-hmm.
what their resources are, how they can get involved, and all of those things.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's true at almost any level. Even if you look around here on campus, people have a lot of grievances with their housing experience, but a lot of people don't know about the RHA, the Resident Housing Association. And the RHA has a lot of power to be able to appeal the housing office, but people don't go to the RHA.
Mm-hmm.
If they would, then their concerns would be heard more by people higher up in housing than if they just sent an email to the general housing account.
Yeah.
But it's hard that there's not a lot of information about that. People don't know about that. And I think that's true at every level too. A lot of people don't know that they can just email their federal senator's office and get information to them, or that they can just go to their city council meetings.
Yeah.
You know, that's not something you're really like taught in school.
Yeah.
That your involvement is important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that getting that into people's heads that what they do can be important and it's so accessible there for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think spreading the information is more important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I just don't know, because I agree with you. I think that's very important to just get the information out. But, like, we're living in the information age where, you know, we're all just flooded with so many different, like, ideas from, you know, the media. And, like, it's really hard to, you know, get that information just because, you know, your algorithm just, you know, tells you what you want to hear. And like, if you don't want to hear about politics, you're not going to hear about politics. And I don't know, I think there definitely needs to be just something in place that gets the word out and like gets people involved. Because, you know, if we look back in like the freaking 1800s, if you were a white dude, obviously, but you know, you were very involved in politics, you had like, you know, a say in what was being done, and you know, democracy was working. And I guess that could also be a condition of democracy where it only works on a small scale. But I mean, it's never really been done on a large scale like this, like in America, so there's no way to say like if it's gonna work or not. So I mean, I think, you know, a lot of that sentiment about, you know, the United States being too big to have a democracy is really just, it's, I guess, unknown still. Like, we don't know if it could work. Because obviously, I think right now it's not really working in our favor, but I think if we have more information, like you said, and more things in place to promote democracy, I think it could work.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors in play with it. Like, there's an oversaturation of information. You know, we take in too much and we don't do enough, I think. But it's also kind of systematic that a lot of kids aren't even taught about the government and politics. And that's part of the issue. But also, I think that being taught about how to get involved is just as important. I think if a really major push were made for that, there are resources in place to make it possible to spread information better. You know, like the Amber Alert system can also be used for general PSAs. I feel like that's not super unreasonable in my head. Like a big message going out on election day saying don't forget to vote, or you know, the city of Las Cruces using it on a smaller scale to say the city council's reviewing the annual budget today, come stop by at 6 o'clock. I think that that's reasonable, but I can also see the privacy concerns, people maybe getting irritated with that. But I think that those resources are there in order to better utilize information. Yeah.
So I mean that kind of like pretty much answers our next next question, if democracy can survive or how we should reform it. So
yeah, I think that we see democracy doing pretty well on the small scale. It does raise concerns of